Workers at a birth center. So there's different types of midwives. There's certified nurse midwives, certified professional midwives, licensed midwives. There's even direct entry midwives, certified midwives. There's biblical midwives. Granny midwives. There's a lot of different variations. I'm just going to stick to the top 3 at this point that I see most birth centers utilizing for their midwife teams. So certified nurse midwives, they can do full scope. Depending on your state, some states they have to be supervised. Some states they can't own a business. And then some states, the CPMs are a little more restrictive and they have to collaborate with a nurse midwife or a doctor, or if they're trying a home birth center, their client has to get screened by a nurse midwife or a physician. So there's a lot of benefits that CPMs and CNMs have to each other, and I have not seen it in many places being tapped to its full potential. We both bring so much knowledge and diversity to the team, and we have to remember that we all come with the key core mindset of improving birth outcomes, improving women's advocacy for healthcare services, and we each have different backgrounds and skills. CPMs tend to be more apprenticeship model, alternative friendly, herbal knowledge. There's just a different educational pathway. A nurse midwife tends to be some sort of hospital-based exposure, labor and delivery, nursing, hospital-based midwifery, and they don't get much in school about the community-based side. They depend on their CPM colleagues to teach them about water births and physiological birth and newborn care the first month of life, and how to get that medical mindset of birth out of their ingrained trained system. So I think there's a way we can really benefit from having teams of a variety of midwives together. But I would say most birth centers, it's CPMs across the country, and then a few are owned and operated by CNMs. It just depends on the state regulations and the dynamics. Doulas are an awesome aspect of birth centers. I don't see too many people utilizing them as employed staff. I see it as more of like an outside referral source, like, hey, we have a list of doulas in the community, and they're all great, and these ones serve in the hospital only, these ones come to our birth center. But I would challenge birth center owners. There's so much potential to creating. My other vision is we have birth assistant pools that have cross training as birth assistants, doulas, and birth photographers. And there is that multi-skill of when you have some downtime, you can get some beautiful pictures of the birth. You can get, kind of like they do for weddings, you can make some beautiful booklets postpartum to offer them and purchase and things. So you've got some additional revenue. You can ask for some rights for the photos for marketing. If there is labor support and heavier needs, having a birth assistant that has your doula skills and is an immense quality to be able to really help with labor support and understand it, because a lot of birth assistants, depending on how you utilize them with your practice, they may come only towards the end of the birth side, and the midwife does the labor support. That tends to be more of the hospital, or I apologize, the home birth side. But with birth centers, because you have a higher volume, you have more demands of your midwifery team. I encourage, when we do our business consulting and our structure, that their birth assistants come sooner. There's immense value when the midwife comes and quote unquote admits them to the birth center. The birth assistant comes and they need to have extensive doula skills so they can do the labor support. And I even challenge my midwives to get birth assistants to their ultimate potential, to do vaginal exams, to do intermittent monitoring. Not saying they're going to do it all the time, but you have these skills that if all of a sudden there's 2 people in labor and you're doing a birth, you know your other client in the other room is safely getting her intermittent monitoring. You know she's in great hands. It's almost giving them some of those additional labor and delivery nursing skills that the average birth assistant, unless they're a midwife student, isn't exposed to. So I definitely want to challenge everybody to think about doulas in a sense of, you can cross-train your birth assistants. You could have some separate packages for your birth center for labor and delivery, birth doulas and postpartum doulas. It's going to improve your outcomes. It's going to add additional revenue to the practice. When we talk a lot with building teams and systems and birth centers, you want multiple ancillary services. You don't just want the midwife doing births. You want to be able to have these teams, because this is what makes midwifery and birth centers sustainable across the country, is having all these other resources and services that we're talking about with these staffing teams. And maybe they're an independent contractor. Maybe you don't have to directly, quote unquote, employ them and hire them. They have a room they rent. They're your primary collaboration. You get a cut from what they're offering as their services. So you don't have to be their boss. Like, there's many ways you can structure these relationships with the people on your team. Birth assistants are essential with birth centers and any out-of-hospital midwifery practice that's doing births. And there's variations of how they're trained. There's no quote unquote national certification. AABC has a birth center certification. Empowering Midwifery Education has a birth center certification that I added my own flair and style from boots on the grounds, midwives, and what we would like to know versus sometimes I think these national organizations, they use a lot of the textbooks and the philosophy and great knowledge, but tangible tips, tangible things to accelerate the success of your birth assistants from real live other birth assistants is a very powerful tool. And I work closely with birth centers to help them, where we get a team, 5-10 birth assistants trained at a time. We do some skills and drills, and boom, you have a high caliber birth assistant team that can implement things and help you with those rare emergencies, setting up equipment, charting, labor support, handling, putting together the tub, the inflatable tub, and putting it away, water birth management with the tub temperature and the newborn and breastfeeding. There's so many things that a birth assistant can be utilized for. And I tend to see midwives using them only for a tiny piece. They call them with birth because they need their help for rare emergencies with baby and placenta being delivered, and then they help clean up. But I want to challenge midwives. There's so much potential with our birth assistants to add additional training, additional skills. They can be so much more of a utilization for the teams and help the midwives than I see a lot of birth centers do. Lactation consultants are absolutely amazing. I think it's hard as midwives. We think, well, I can do everything. I'm the best. And that's that self-employed mindset where we need a team around us. Like having someone, we are great at being the initial gateway and easy things in education with breastfeed, but unless you're an IBCLC and you're deeply passionate about breastfeeding, most midwives do not have the knowledge and skills that a lactation consultant has. And so having those people on your team, like you could make some really cool postpartum packages for your birth center where they have a postpartum doula, they get some birth photos, they get lactation to come a few times the next couple of months so they get well established in a great relationship. The midwife does home visits, the birth assistant comes and checks on them, childbirth education. There's so many things we could add to our service lines instead of outsourcing that will really help the stability and strength, because now you've got cohesive branding. You whether you employ them or an independent contractor, you do regular meetings, you collaborate, you'll have a more core similar philosophy of how you're serving the community when you have these resources under one umbrella. Administration support. These people are so important, and it's hard because a lot of midwives will just hire, I need the people doing the care, the frontline stuff, and then I'll hire the administration support later, and then they're realizing all their clinical staff is getting extremely burnt out because they're doing two roles. They're being the midwife in the forefront, but they're also being the midwife director, and they're doing the day-to-day business operation in the backdrops that an office manager would do. The midwife is behind all day because she's trying to answer calls in between seeing people because we don't have a receptionist. You're losing customers because you don't have someone answering the phone. Most birth centers and midwifery practices, the phone goes to a voicemail, and it breaks my heart. Like the little bit you would pay for a receptionist for the value of that extra one client that you potentially lost, the next level of quality improvements. The hospital's calling needing records because you did a transfer this morning and now you're doing office all day. Like there's so many quality improvement aspects to having a key administration team. And it doesn't have to be crazy complicated, because I get it with budget and money and time. And that's why making an accurate fee schedule is so important. But that office manager and receptionist in particular are so essential for the success of a birth center that wants to scale up and really take things to the next level. You may decide to have billers in-house or outsource them. You may have marketers in-house or outsource them. You may have someone that works remotely that strictly keeps up with your compliance and regulations as a birth center and you're AABC certified. Like, there's certain things that you can delegate, and I want you to utilize everybody on your team to their max skills. I don't want you to diversify. It's important that they understand what the other person is doing, because if they're sick and they're off and something needs to be done, but I want you to have core people that are experts in each of those things, because they're going to be doing it day in and day out versus you ask somebody to do it and they hadn't done it in 6 months. They're going to have to train, they're going to have to review. It takes a lot of time and it makes things not very efficient with care and with the system in the backdrop. So you don't realize the ripple effect of time and headaches and stress with not having well-oiled machines and having job descriptions and scope of work and day-to-day operations and these scheduling and how to schedule people, how to consult people, how to algorithm through triaging if they call at the front desk and they need something. These are the important things that your administration staff can do so that the midwives and the clinical staff, the birth assistants, the doulas, the lactation, can focus on the care side, and then they're only interrupted and they're only doing those other things if administration has done their algorithm or they're sick that day. Like, that's that well-oiled machine. Childbirth educators, this is a one I see a lot that people do with doulas. They just refer out, they let them rent a room. And I would challenge you, have your doulas, have your birth assistants, have your birth team. The more you can have them be receptionists, the more you can have them be childbirth educators, the more you can have them part of their day-to-day prenatal care, is going to make the experience for these families so much better. Because now they have a familiar face. They're not having a bunch of strangers at birth. That more personalized and deeper connection and learning during childbirth, their fears and their traumas and their worries, that childbirth educator can now bring it to the birth and knows how to customize their education and training. So birth centers can have their own educators versus sending them to someone that teaches about the hospital in the home setting, because they're a community educator that has to meet the needs of everybody, versus you have an exclusive education class that's customized and made just for your birth center and your birth center client. Newborn care specialists, yes, the midwives can do newborn care the first month of life, but there's so much untapped resources. Making sure you have a family practice pediatrician, a nurse practitioner, a naturopath, a chiropractor, a craniosacral therapist. Like, there's so many specialists within newborn care to help with breastfeeding, to help with education and sleep routines. There's sleep consultants, there's postpartum doulas, there's, depending on your client's needs and who you serve and what your community culture is like, there's so many untapped resources of ancillary services that I don't see a lot of birth centers utilizing to their max potential. So I want birth centers to make schedules where every exam room is being used every day. You have scattered blocks that, okay, that Mondays and Thursday afternoon is craniosacral therapy, and Monday and Thursday morning in this room is our lactation consultant. And utilize your rooms, rent them out, employ staff. Most birth centers, they use their exam rooms. They have 2 of them, maybe 3, and they're used 2 days a week, and the rest of the time they just sit there. There's so much untapped potential of the downtime of your birth center with the childbirth classroom, support groups, education, a boutique shop. Like, there's so many things you could do within your birth center and creating your team that would really help with all your service lines and strengthen the financial stability and the quality improvements for the community. Community outreach directors, like, this would be someone that can do marketing, they can do collaboration improvements with the hospital, with EMS, they can find you great additional resources in the community, and obstetrician and MFM, counselors, psychiatrists, support groups, nonprofit organizations. They can connect you with great marketers and lawyers and accountants. So a community outreach director's role really could be be customized to how do you want to get your branding and reputation for your birth center out there, and how do you want to collaborate and recruit great people for your birth center to work closely with, whether it's day-to-day business operations sides, quality improvement, additional service lines that you chose not to have within your birth center. Like, you want someone, whether that's a subset role of your office manager or you hire someone remotely in person, that's a mom that absolutely loves your birth center, had 3 babies with your birth centers. When you hire products of the product, they are your best employees because they live and breathe intimately what you do. And it makes a world of difference when that passion and energy comes out when they're on the phone and someone has just found out they're pregnant and they just had 3 babies with you. They can directly be a testimonial of your care. And they can also talk about the ins and outs of what was it like being a client and what is it like working with the team. And so there's so many added value to have your team being considered products of the product. People that are deeply into and a long history of birth advocacy makes a world of difference. Outsourced business administration support. I think a lot of people with financial management, marketing, business consulting, accountants, lawyers, legal compliance, birth center, credentialing and insurance contracting. There's a lot of things you can decide to do in-house, but I always challenge people when it's a very unique specialty and it's an ever-evolving system, like billing, like the laws and the compliance change constantly and each billing company is different, or accounting, the IRS and the state laws for your taxes changes every year and sometimes even more frequently, and lawyers and the laws change. Like, outsourcing to the specialists that keep up with all those trends is far more effective and far more cost making sense for your practice than trying to teach someone on your team. So like business consulting, like there's new strategies, there's new events, there's little like thinking outside the box, leveraging particularly a birth center consultant who sees all these other birth centers and has this knowledge and advice and this perspective to improve your operations, help you with revenue, help you with struggles, help you with staffing, help you with marketing. They're going to bring stuff to the table that you just can't teach your local team to do. So there are situations you're going to want to outsource, you're going to want to pay premium, because I can easily show people the return on investment cost benefit analysis for those avoiding a lawsuit, those near misses, the improved outcomes, the getting fines, getting tax audits. Like, they're far more costly to not have things set up right than aftermath and you're trying to clean them up. So alternative therapists, like depending on how your practice is structured, you can rent a room. They may have their own business. They're new to the area. They want to just work a little bit each week, or they want to work full time. So you can have chiropractors, naturopaths, acupuncturists, massage therapists, nurse practitioners, family services. You could have so many things under your umbrella, or you just rent a room to them and you have a close collaboration with them. So there is so many services that we can include with alternative therapies and make it the mainstream health system. Like, I give examples. If you can make a one-stop shop where the kids and the husband and everybody can be seen for full scope primary care services, prevention model, making it a community center that has a birth center within it, you'll have people that will drive 4 or 6 hours, come for a couple days in town, and really take advantage of all the services you put together, because they're desperately looking for these services in a one-stop shop. They go all over the place, scattered. I'll drive 2 hours this way, I'll drive an hour this way to find that great philosophy alternative services. People value, with our market and birth center clients, quality over quantity. They'll pay more for the value. They see the improved outcomes, the return on investment for the money they're doing for their lifelong health, the health of their families. And I challenge people, like, the more you can add a one-stop shop of alternatives, and birth is just a component of your birth center, the more revenue, the more impact you're going to have on the community, and the stronger it's going to be to handle the financial ups and downs that healthcare systems tend to bring, particularly with birth. So as an overall conclusion, I really want to challenge each and every one of you to think about whether you're starting out your planning for your birth center, you have a well-oiled machine birth center, who's on my team, what are their different roles, what are their strengths and weaknesses, where do we want to go, where are our gaps, where are there a long list of projects that aren't being done and getting missed, or things you want to do but you just have been pushing off, and you need to make sure that when you're envisioning this team, I don't want you to be thinking about the money initially. I want you to think about what does your birth center need, and then we would start working on the budgets and the fee schedules and the revenue services that would support those additional staff members. So I think too many times people with birth centers and midwifery practices, because of the lack of business education, they look at only the money and what does my money allow me to do versus thinking, what does my birth center need for teams, systems, services, resources, and then how is it going to be paid for? What are the fee schedules? What are the value we're going to add? What are the products? What is readjusting our fee schedule right now look like? Maybe we give multiple package options where there's one that's just core midwifery for the birth center, but then we give the opportunity for them to buy bundles and buy additional things that will compensate for those additional ancillary services. So there's so many ways to set this up. And I want our birth centers to be well-oiled business machines versus a midwife that's self-employed that tends to do everything herself because she doesn't have the financial means and the knowledge to be able to scale up her birth center.